Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome to the broadcast. Thank you for your patience this evening while I worked out troubleshooting the issue that we've been having with the microphone audio lately. It took me a little bit while to sort out what the issue was and to get that all fixed. But thank you, and hopefully this broadcast you can hear me right off the bat. I'm Phaedra, for those of you who might be new to the broadcast. Tonight we are having our full moon in Cancer guided releasing practice for the sidereal full moon in Cancer. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to be here, and hopefully there's no tech hiccups. I was going to say hookups, and that would have come out wrong. Hopefully there's no tech hiccups. So for those of you who are able to join me live, if you would let me know in the comments that you can see me and hear me okay, that would be wonderful. We're broadcasting today live to YouTube and to Facebook. I'm going to double check on the streams for both of those real quick before we dive into the actual releasing broadcast. And here we go. Quick test of YouTube. Oh, there we go. We have audio on YouTube. Awesome. So yeah, there's been an issue with my microphone last several broadcasts, and the only way to get audio on the broadcast once I go live has been to unplug it, and then we're not using the microphone audio, and it affects the audio quality, and I apologize for that. That's not as enjoyable of an experience for you as the viewer. I'm going to go ahead and flip back over to the Facebook tab here, just because I know there were some folks planning on joining us from Facebook for sure, and I'll kind of bounce back and forth between Facebook and YouTube comments, and one day, maybe eventually, I'll figure out integrated comments for this broadcast and I'll have them all in one place. But thanks everyone for joining me tonight. So the broadcasts that we do here in the Facebook group and on YouTube, the idea is to provide guidance for you on how you can leverage the transiting planets and the energy that they're bringing us to affect your life in a positive way. I use Western sidereal astrology in my practice here with Mystick Physick Astrology, and the idea is to help you reconnect with your soul purpose and to remember why it is you came into this life to begin with. And so part of what we do with the lunar live streams is leverage the energy of the new moon to set intentions and to make initiations, and leverage the energy of the full moon to give birth into the world, things we've been working on, to finish up projects that we have in place, and to suss out what it is we want to let go of and release that we've maybe outgrown, or that just isn't serving us any longer. And sometimes these can be physical, tangible things. Sometimes these can be energetic things. Sometimes they're beliefs. Sometimes they're people. Sometimes they're ideas or ideologies. And tonight, what we're doing is our releasing for the full moon in Cancer. And I need to make sure that I have a lighter handy, which it looks like I do. I got my bowl. I almost forgot my bowl. But I got it not too late. So I use Western sidereal astrology in my practice, for those of you who are new to the broadcast, and specifically I use the Fagan-Bradley zodiac. So you're going to want to be working from your Fagan-Bradley sidereal natal chart as we go along this evening, because that's the zodiac orientation that we're going to be referencing. If you don't have your chart, you can get a copy of that at mystickphysick.com/sidereal tools. There's a free online calculator. And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is really exciting. If you know someone who might be interested in joining us tonight, feel free to tag them or share this with them after the fact. They can always watch the replay of the broadcast. And so tonight, what we're going to do is explore the astrology of this full moon in Cancer. We're going to do that in the first part of the broadcast. In the second part of the broadcast, we're going to talk about which house this falls into for each of you according to your sidereal rising sign. I'll go over, in case you need a refresher, what the themes of that house are. And that way you can, if you want to work specifically with your own natal blueprint, you can. We're going to also be exploring in the third part of the broadcast the themes and archetypes of Cancer, how you can recognize where you've been avoiding things or hiding out from yourself or sidestepping things that you would be better off facing head on, because these are sometimes some of the things that we can do when we get caught up in Cancer energy. And we're going to explore some prompts around releasing fears of vulnerability, which might be keeping you stuck or keeping you in your shell, so to speak. And so grab a pen or pencil and a piece of paper and your sidereal natal chart, or at least know your sidereal rising sign. And together we're going to jump in and use the full moon in Cancer tonight to let go. And this is our first full moon of 2021, which is kind of exciting. Let's get started. So full moons really represent opportunities to release old habits, patterns of thought, behavior, situations, people, energies, stuff, junk, things that aren't serving us any longer, things that perhaps we've outgrown, that are maybe keeping us stuck in the same place or stagnating our potential for growth and expansion, or just taking up space in our lives and preventing the new from being able to move into our lives and show up for us in the way that we want new things to be able to show up for us. We want to be able to welcome in that energy. And so tonight, our practice is all around moving on so that we can invite the new back in and ultimately to grow. Okay, so this full moon in Cancer is actually kind of an interesting full moon. And I am going to play with my notebooks right here real quick, just so that I have the chart handy in case I want to look at the chart. And of course, the chart is all scribbled with my notes, as always, because that's what I do. So this full moon is really, I think, overall kind of challenging and kind of tense. We have a pretty strong, hefty T-square going on in the chart for this full moon. And we have some goings on related to Neptune that we also need to factor into our calculus around understanding the energy of this full moon and how it can play out. The moon is, of course, ruling, because it's a full moon in Cancer. She's ruling it from her domicile, as she does all full moons in Cancer, because she has to be in Cancer for the moon to be full there. She's opposing Saturn, and Saturn is also in his domicile in Capricorn. And so this is kind of an interesting signature. And then, of course, we have the moon square Mars, and Mars is in his domicile in Aries, having just conjoined Uranus a little over a week, maybe a week and a half ago. It was, I want to say, right around the 20th. Yeah, that we had that conjunction exact. And here we are on the 26th. So right around a week ago, sorry, not quite a week and a half. We have the sun, the other counterpart to our full moon, conjunct Jupiter. And Jupiter is in fall right now. So that, of course, is going to flavor how we experience this full moon. And we have Venus conjunct Scorpio as well. And we have Pluto squaring the nodes. Now, this was just exact as of yesterday. And it's an important thing to be aware of, because anytime you have a planet at the bendings, which is at the square to the lunar nodes, and we're working with the true node, not the mean node, that planet is playing a critical role in a dynamic shift in how we experience things going forward. And that Neptune is relevant to what we're experiencing with this full moon just because of the timing. It's been slow coming. So that square of Neptune to the lunar nodes is kind of reaching its crescendo, or reached its crescendo yesterday. And some of these aspects are just kind of orchestrating just perfectly so that they reach their exactness kind of all at the same time. And that speaks, I think, to the significance of their interaction, right? Oftentimes we have multiple aspects going on in any given chart, and some of them are perfecting earlier than others or later than others. So they might not all be coming to their peak at the exact same moment. And that's not the case with the dynamics that we have around this full moon. They're all coming to their peak within nearly minutes of each other, certainly well within an hour of each other. And so that intensification of these aspects is all concentrated at a singular moment in time. And that's kind of significant. It speaks to an amplified intensity and potentially to the significance of the events. Okay. Uranus is in Aries just about a week off of his station. No, longer than that. About 10 days. So this is where the 10-day mark comes in. Uranus is about 10 days off his stationing direct from the end of his 2020 retrograde. So he's returned to full motion, still getting up to speed, not quite up to speed, kind of slow and sluggish. He's only about 4 minutes of arc off of the degree he's stationed at, which is still really close. And that stationary point is points to a spot in the chart where there's an amplification and an intensification of the energy of the planet that is stationing. Okay? And so we're still dealing with some fairly intense Uranian energy, and in terms of direct motion, he's still not quite back up to speed yet. And so this also plays a bit of a role in how we experience this full moon. The energy that we have going on here is kind of interesting. It speaks to these hard squares in the chart, the T-squares in the chart between the sun, the moon, Mars, involving the sun's conjunction with Jupiter, involving the moon's opposition to Saturn. This speaks to conflict and tension. Specifically something like a break that could be preceded by a sudden disruption or an unexpected conflict or unexpected violence or an unexpected argument, something that erupts quite suddenly that you're not anticipating, that causes a shift in how things move forward, a sudden shift in how things move forward. And so that is spoken to by this T-square aspect that we have going on, but it's also spoken to a little bit by this aspect of Neptune at the bendings, and making his, receiving his full precise squares from the true lunar nodes. The way that the Neptune square, the nodes can play out, keeping in mind Neptune is the planet of deception, is the planet of confusion, the planet of disillusionment, right? This speaks to the potential also for a sudden break around our own disillusionment with a situation or a deception that we've been fed, secrets potentially, some lack of clarity where something happens related to the perfection of this square between Neptune and the lunar nodes that perhaps brings out a moment of clarity, a sudden lifting of the fog that has a direct impact on the direction in which we move forward, or the way that we perceive a situation or a paradigm and how we proceed from it. So there's two types of shifts that are in play at this full moon. The one involving clarity or disillusionment and the path forward, the shift in the situation, and then the one involving our luminaries square to Mars, all of them in their domiciles, Sun conjunct Jupiter in his fall, and Moon opposing Saturn. So what you could expect to kind of see is, as I was saying, a conflict or a sudden break preceded by disruption or unexpected conflict or violence or argument. There's a potential, because of what we have going on with Pluto and Venus, that an influential partner or lover may come into play in this dynamic, or there's a possibility of the influence of money or power affecting how we proceed or affecting the situation, affecting the dynamic, affecting how we move forward from it. Okay? There is built into this full moon because of that Venus-Pluto conjunction taking place, a new partnership, love, or financial cycle beginning at this time. So the conjunction brings about the ending, the close of the previous cycle, and initiates a new cycle, right? So expect to see that type of dynamic playing out in your life or in the lives of those around you or in the broader world at large, where there is a cycle of partnership, a cycle of love, a cycle related to finance or potentially related to influence, power, that's coming to a close, and then a new cycle beginning. Okay? And keep in mind, with Uranus still within that 4 to 5 minutes of his stationary point and still aspecting Mars wide, their separating conjunction, that could still bring an element of disruptiveness or instability to the effects of this full moon. You can expect to see some impulsive action. That's true at any full moon, but when you have Mars involved, when you have Uranus involved, that amplifies it, because Mars and Uranus are both known to bring about or bring out our headstrong and impulsive tendencies. And so you can expect to see that kind of amplified with this full moon. What I want to call out, though, with Mars square the luminaries, that speaks to actions that you take having a direct determinative influence, impact on the outcome of the full moon. Now, typically, we look to the ruler of the full moon to determine the outcome. And in this case, the ruler is the moon in her domicile, but she's square to Mars in Mars's domicile. And this is a really fairly tight square. And so it speaks to Mars, of course, being the planet of action and initiative, right? Actions, whatever action you take will determine the outcome. And you might think, oh, well, duh, that makes sense. Well, it's not always true of every full moon. Sometimes the circumstances determine the outcome. Sometimes other factors determine the outcome. But in this particular full moon specifically, the actions that you take will have a direct influence on the outcome that you experience. So keep that in mind as you choose what actions those are. Okay. This full moon also gives us an opportunity to move in a new direction. And I think that's important, because that speaks to what actions you take could determine the outcome. What direction will you choose to move in? Coming to the close of a cycle, how has that cycle played out for you? Has it been beneficial? Has it been not beneficial? Has it worked against you? What changes in behavior and approach might you need to take going forward to move things in a new direction, to reach a different type of outcome, one more closely aligned with what you want for yourself? These are things to be keeping in mind, and it would be appropriate at this full moon for you to be taking initiative. That's what Mars is saying. Take initiative. I'm going to just check really quick on the status of our streams. We have a couple of viewers on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. Let me know where you're joining us from. I would love to know. Things are going actually pretty smoothly with the broadcast at this point, and that's really rather refreshing given what's been happening in the last month or so with the audio. So thank you all for being patient on that score and for joining me. Harfen says, how can I succeed? I am 35. That's a good question, Harfen. Oftentimes it is more directly related to how a particular lunation or astrological event interacts with your own natal chart. In this case, what I would encourage you to do is have a look at your sidereal natal chart for personal planets or significant points that might be making or receiving aspects from either of the luminaries, which are at 14 degrees of their respective signs, the sun in Capricorn, the moon in Cancer. So 14 degrees there would be an important place to look, or even 14 degrees of any of the cardinal signs. And I would also take a close look at anything that might be aspecting 15 or 16 degrees of Aries. And then I would keep my eye on that Sun-Jupiter conjunction. And then take also a quick look at where you might have a personal planet or point making contact with 24 degrees of, I would say, Aquarius, or either of the lunar nodes, because that would bring Neptune into play. Okay. So if that helps you kind of maybe get a better handle on what aspects of your life might be being activated by this full moon, it can relate to which house these things are falling into. It can also relate to whether or not aspects from the current lunation to your chart are activating rulers of significant houses for you. And I'm going to ask you to please be patient. If you hear weird noises, Penny is in the studio with me tonight. She was in here hanging out when I shut the door, and now she's scratching at it, trying to get it to open so that she can go out, and she's just going to have to wait. But thank you so much for your questions. If you have more questions, definitely bring them in. Oh, now I have the wrong notes in front of me. Those are the ones for the next Sidereal Insight Astro update that we're going to be doing coming up on the 31st, the day after Mercury stations retrograde. And that's actually another factor to kind of consider as you're trying to tease out how this particular full moon might affect you. And the energy that we might be experiencing as we navigate it. Do keep in mind that Mercury is full in his shadow of the first retrograde of the year, and he will be stationing coming up here in just a few days on the 30th. As we get closer to that point of planetary station, that becomes more and more intense. Mercury and Venus being combust. I'm going to assume you mean in your own chart. Combustion is a tough aspect to experience, Harfan, in part because the sun has a tendency to overwhelm the planets and their energies, their planets and their influence when they become combust, at least up until the point where they reach what we call cazimi, which is the really, really, really most tightest window of conjunction with the sun, and then they get amplified. Okay? And so combustion can be difficult because you may not be easily able to tap into the energies of those combust planets because they are being overwhelmed by the most powerful luminary in a chart. Okay. That really kind of wraps up all the most important salient points around the astrology of this particular full moon that I wanted to cover for you before we dive in. I'm going to run through just quickly which house this is falling into for each rising sign and what the themes of that house are for you, and that way if you need that information, we'll have it. If you know the houses and you know which house this is falling into according to your sidereal rising sign, feel free to take a break. Take us about 5 minutes to run through this, and then when we come back, Tanny's crying to get out. When we come back, we'll dive into the archetype and themes of Cancer and some prompts for kind of feeling out what it is you want to let go of or move past. Penny, honey, you're gonna have to wait. That's what she gets for being trapped in here with me. All right. So diving in, if you have Aries rising, this is a 4th house full moon for you. So that, of course, relates to home, property, your residential status, your living arrangements, and your living environment. Can also specifically speak to family dynamics or events and activities related to your parents. It could be either one or both of them. Those are the things to be keeping an eye on. If you have Taurus rising, this is a 3rd house full moon for you. So that, of course, relates to local travel, short distance communication within your own community, within your own neighborhood. It speaks to dealings with siblings, neighbors, extended family, things like aunts, uncles, cousins, and your immediate environment. Okay. Also, definitely relates to patterns of communication, cycles of communication, and even commerce comes under Mercury and the 3rd house rulership there. For Gemini, this is a second house full moon for you. So this relates to earned income and expenses, wealth, possessions, movable assets, portable assets, so not real estate, money that you earn from the work that you do with your own two hands. And then I did say possessions, also your expenses, so your cash outflow as well as your inflow. Okay. Cancer, of course, this is a first house full moon for you. So that, of course, relates to appearance. It relates to self-expression. It relates to personality and identity, your self-awareness, potentially, your physical body, how you look, how you present yourself to the world, how you interact with your environment, your mannerisms, your behaviors. Full moons in the first house are a fantastic opportunity to let go of a behavior that doesn't serve you any longer, that you're trying to eliminate from your life. And so that can be one way that you can use a full moon in the first house. If you have Leo rising, of course, this will be a 12th house full moon for you. And the 12th house is related to privacy and seclusion. It's related to projects that you work on behind closed doors, outside of the public eye. It's related to solo projects, your private life, your spiritual life, and your spiritual path, your spiritual lessons, meditation practices. But it also speaks to the unconscious mind and unconscious beliefs, our escapist tendencies, and it can speak quite specifically to our addictions. Okay. For Virgo, this is an 11th house full moon for you. So this is friends, your social life, organizations, and your interactions with them. Hopes and dreams, which is one of my favorite things to work with when we're talking about the 11th house, right? Because we all have hopes and dreams. And so a full moon there is an opportunity to bring a long-held hope or dream to fruition. And I encourage you to take steps to do that. For Libra, this is a 10th house full moon. So 10th house is career and achievement, right? It's your professional life. It's awards and recognition, fame, status and reputation, but also can be like the negative side of fame. So notoriety and infamy. It can speak to falls from grace if things are creating tension in the way that they interact with your own natal chart. So just be aware of that. It's both the good side and the bad side of fame and notoriety, right? For Scorpio, this is a 9th house full moon for you. This relates to long distance travel, long distance communication, things like publishing and broadcasting, live streaming like we're doing right now. Can relate to legal or higher education matters, your religious life or religious experiences. Philosophy can also speak to legal matters. Okay. For Sagittarius, this is an 8th house full moon. So for those of you who have Sagittarius rising, you might find themes around other people's money cropping up at this full moon. Now, this could be not just money, but the resources that belong to other people that you need or want access to. So not just financial resources, but all types of resources. And specifically, if you have a partner, it can speak to the resources of the partner. Investment earnings, insurance payouts, taxes that you're due to have refunded to you, or even taxes that you owe or insurance premiums that you need to pay. Inheritance and estate matters are 8th house matters. Bonus and commission income is ruled by the 8th house. And then the 8th house is also concerned with themes around death, rebirth, and transformation, psychology, psychological healing, investigation, the digging up of secrets, things like that. So any of those themes could be active for you, for those of you who have Sagittarius rising. For Capricorn, this will be a 7th house full moon for you. So this relates to partnership and marriage. It relates to long-term committed relationships that we have with people. That can include business partnerships, relationships that we have with other people in general. It can also speak to the shadow side of ourselves, what we reject about ourselves and tend to project onto other people. So when we have a full moon in the 7th house, it can be a really great opportunity to engage in a little bit of shadow work if that's something you feel inclined to do. For Aquarius rising, this of course is a 6th house full moon, and the 6th house full moon is about our day-to-day life. It's about our habits, our schedules, our work-a-day life, and our work environment, things that happen at the office. Has to also do with health and diet. It involves employees and pets, service animals, and people who work in service to us. Things like that. A full moon can be a really wonderful time to let go of a bad habit that you're trying to eliminate from your life. And when we're speaking of diet and health, it can be a good time for eliminating unhealthy foods from your diet, foods that you know just aren't good for you and that might be having a negative overall impact on your health. These are things that you can begin to eliminate from your diet during a full moon in your 6th house. Okay. For Pisces rising, this will be a 5th house full moon for you. So this is related to creativity. It's related to children. It's related to love and romance. And so if you have a romantic partner, have an antenna up there. If you have any kind of personal contact with the major aspects taking place right now. But you can also leverage this full moon as an opportunity to put the finishing touches on a creative project or something that you're giving birth to. Keeping in mind, these are activities that bring us pleasure, hobbies, creative endeavors. The 5th house also relates to sports, risk-taking, and gambling. So you may find those sorts of themes active for you as well if you have Pisces rising. And so that really wraps it for the rising signs and which house this is falling into for you. If anyone has questions about that, let me know in the comments below. I'm going to double check on our Facebook stream. I've been giving most of my attention here to YouTube since we have live viewers commenting on YouTube. And now what we'll do for our 3rd part of the broadcast is we'll dive into the themes and archetype of Cancer and the prompts that we have for consideration as we decide what it is we would like to release or let go of as we move into the full moon in Cancer. And so Cancer is cardinal water, right? So it's an active principle. It's initiating type of energy because it's cardinal. It's about the beginning of things, right? But it's a water sign, so it's fluid, it's emotional, it's tapping into the feminine side of our psyche, which we all have, right? And so full moons in Cancer can tend to be somewhat emotional, and that's something to keep in mind. Cancer is symbolized by the crab when we're taking a look at this through the lens of modern day astrology. But you may find, if you were to take a look back through the history, through the past of astrology, sometimes you'll find Cancer is represented by the lobster or some other crustacean. And part of the reason for that is back in the day, this is going back to, to medieval times, we use the same word for crab and lobster, at least in the English lexicon. And the fundamental concept is really what we're focusing on. So this is a creature that is soft and tender on the inside, but has a hard, tough exterior. And that's the imagery that you kind of want to focus on and take away from. Don't get too wrapped up in the crabness or the lobsterness. We want to be focusing on this concept of soft-hearted, tender on the inside with a tough exterior. Okay. This is a creature that carries its home with it all the time. And that's actually kind of a signature that we might assign to Cancer people in our lives, people who have the ability to make themselves at home wherever they are. It's kind of a signature trait of those folks with strong Cancer energy in their chart. But this is a creature that has pincers, right? It's defensive. Especially if we're talking about the crab, it scuttles to the side, right? It's got this sideways movement. And so sometimes where we find Cancer in our natal chart can speak to where we struggle to face things head on. Okay? So Cancer archetypes involve the feminine. It's the mother, the moon. We're talking about the natural ruler of the 4th house, which symbolizes the mother and the home. This is the womb, right? the nurturer, the caregiver, the healer, but it can also speak to the archetype of the invisible man. Okay? And I want to kind of touch on that a little bit specifically because I think it's an area where we sometimes neglect giving our attention when we're talking about Cancer. What is the invisible man? Well, how do we make men invisible in our society? There's where the answer lies. The stay-at-home dad, that's an invisible man, at least in modern Western culture. That emotional man, right? We disallow men from having or displaying their own emotional experiences, right? So we make men invisible by denying them that, or expecting and enforcing that they should only engage with their own emotional nature in private out of public eye, where we don't want to see it, right? And that's not right. It's not healthy. It's not good for anyone. Another way that we can make men, just human beings in general, invisible is the vagabond, the homeless person, right? We turn our eyes away from folks who are experiencing that in their lives. We avert our attention because we don't want to face it. We don't want to see it. And so that's another way that we make the invisible man an archetype, right? So these are all different signature qualities of Cancer. Cancer is a defensive energy. It is associated with a clannish nature, us versus them, right? So we might be seeing that, some of that come to a head, but also very, very much defensive. I'm sorry, I did not put my phone on Do Not Disturb because I was trying to troubleshoot the mic before we got started, and that took me 40 minutes to figure out what the heck was wrong with the microphone and why it wasn't picking up the audio properly. But we got it sorted just in time to not need to worry about it anymore. And I say that because coming up on our next broadcast, which is on the 31st of January, it's the next installment of the Sidereal Insights Astro Update. I'm interrupting our talk about Cancer with a little announcement here. That will be broadcast live from the Patreon feed. And even if you're not a subscriber to Patreon for Mystick Physick Astrology, you can join us live, and so that will be broadcast through our Patreon feed. Watch us live there, and of course it will also be live on YouTube just because of how Patreon works. And I will apologize up front for arranging that to happen when Mercury is stationing retrograde, because you know that means we're going to run into technical difficulties. I didn't do that on purpose. It's just the way the calendar fell, and I apologize for that. So moving into the releasing part of our practice, I'm going to get a piece of paper here. I want to go over some prompts with you for you to consider. If you already know what it is you want to let go of and what you want to release, that's fine. If you're not sure, we'll run through these prompts. Don't feel like you have to address them all. Just pick whichever speaks most resonantly to you. Okay? But related to the mother archetype of Cancer, ask yourself, where are you mothering? Or where are you in need of mothering? Where could you ramp that up a notch? But more precisely, where are you smothering? Because sometimes we can over-mother, right? We can be overprotective and inhibit either our own development or the development of those around us by being hyper-vigilant to danger, hyper-vigilant to risk. And sometimes we need to be exposed to risk and have run-ins with danger in order to honor our own experience or to learn how to assert ourselves and tap into our own assertive nature, or to learn new aspects of ourselves, to learn what we're capable of, right? If you don't ever take risks, you don't ever test yourself and see what you're truly, truly capable of in a moment. And the flip side of that is, where are you attached to being mothered instead? So there's two sides to this equation here. Do we maybe need to cut the apron strings? And which end of the apron strings are you on? Are you not being allowed to step into your own full individual expression as an autonomous being with your own sovereign nature inherent in you? Or are you making yourself into the obstacle preventing others from being able to step into their own sovereign self and be autonomous in that way? We can overdo it on either side of that equation. Okay. Ask yourself, is a sense of clannishness, us versus them, othering the other, like too much? Is a sense of clannishness stopping you from being able to appreciate others' differences? Is it stopping you from being able to appreciate the beauty of diversity, the beauty of a variety of experiences, the beauty of a variety of inputs, the variety of voices? Right? Because harmony can be just as beautiful as a solo. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes it can be more beautiful. Where are you hiding? Ask yourself this. Where are you hiding out from the world, on retreat? Where have you grown a shell or put up a wall that's keeping you from being vulnerable? Is it a fear of vulnerability or a fear of exposure? And this is particularly relevant when we have the moon in opposition to Saturn, because Saturn can quite specifically represent our fears in a chart. And so maybe this full moon is about stepping up and facing a fear and conquering it instead of letting it dominate you. And what you stand to gain and achieve by doing that, by taking that risk. Okay? How are the defenses that you've erected in the area of your life where you find Cancer in your sidereal natal chart? How are the defenses you've erected in that part of your life holding you back or limiting your experience of life and the world? What is it you're being overprotective of and why? And can you let that go? Can you let that fear go? Where are you avoiding commitment? Where are you sidestepping an issue instead of facing it head on? And is that serving you? And then finally, can you release your need to control outcomes? That would be the final question to dig into with the night's releasing practice. And I would encourage you to, I'm going to stop here and try and collect my thought because there was something I wanted to bring up related to a lot of this. Let's see if I can tease it back into my brain. It'll come. I'll recap these for anyone who might be joining us late on the live broadcast. Those of you who know what it is you're ready to delve into and let go of, go ahead and get started writing it out, what you're ready to release on your piece of paper, because we're going to do our releasing practice with that piece of paper once we're done. And hopefully this thought comes back to me because it was really kind of juicy and I didn't have it written down in my notes. But let me recap really quickly what these releasing prompts are for anyone who needs a recap. And like I said, don't try to tackle them all. Just take the one that speaks most directly to you. Okay. Where are you mothering or smothering? Or are you attached to being mothered instead? Do you need to cut the apron strings? Is a sense of clannishness stopping you from appreciating the differences and the beauty of those differences in people? Where are you hiding? Where have you grown a shell or put up a wall that is keeping you from being vulnerable? Where are you experiencing that fear of vulnerability or fear of exposure? And is it holding you back? Is it impeding your progress and impeding what it is you want to achieve? How are the defenses you've erected in your Cancer house holding you back or limiting your experience? What are you overprotective of and why? Where are you avoiding commitment or sidestepping an issue instead of facing it head on? And can you release your need to control outcomes? And it did come back to me. The final point that I wanted to bring up related to this full moon in Cancer. It's the first one of our new year. It is also activating, for those of you who are directly affected by it, it's activating. It's the final full moon that activates our full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus that we had last November 30th. So if you checked your chart according to my video on the late 2020 eclipse season, critical dates and degrees you need to know, if you checked your chart against those degrees that we went over in that video for the November eclipse and had contact with or aspects to or from personal planets or points in your own natal chart with that eclipse, then just know that this full moon in Cancer could reactivate that eclipse related issue for you, could bring it back up into your awareness, could bring it to the next stage of development, could reveal information or news related to the goings on that eclipse is signifying for you in relation to your own personal astrology. And if you do need a refresher on that, you may want to rewatch that video, or at least that section of the video. And I believe I included a link for that video in the video description. So definitely check that out because it will be relevant. And then finally, when we have the new moon coming up, I think it's on the 11th of February, when we have that new moon coming, that will be the final new moon activating our solar eclipse in Scorpio that we had December 14th. And so we're coming out right now in these next 2 weeks. Today, coming up, not today, it's actually the full moon is on the 28th, and today we're on the 26th. We're doing it just a little bit ahead of schedule. But this full moon and then that coming new moon in February are the final 2 lunations at the outside tail end of our late 2020 eclipse season. And so that's something that's kind of relevant. And I wanted to be able to, or be sure to bring that up and remind those of you who are affected to have an antenna up related to those goings on. Okay. So everyone take a moment to write down what it is you're wanting to let go of. I'm going to do that for myself here just quickly. And then when we are done, we'll circle back around and do the actual releasing part of the practice where we let it all go. Okay. If you need more time, feel free to take it. As you're done, if you are willing, and I'm always grateful to those of you who are willing to share in the comments what it is you're letting go of, what it is you're ready and willing to move past or release from your life and from your experience, no matter what it is, whether it's a physical, tangible thing or a belief or anything like that. I find that we often provide great value to each other in sharing what it is we're ready to move beyond or let go of, and great value in sharing what it is we want to invite into our lives during the new moons when we do our intention setting and begin our initiations. And so if you're willing to share, thank you. I appreciate that and I love it. I will share what I am letting go of tonight. So for me, I'm Gemini rising, and the full moon in Cancer relates to money, earned income, wealth, possessions, expenses, right? And so, and it can also, second house can relate to self-worth, self-esteem, and our values as well. And I have worked with those themes in the past when we've done our full moon releasing practice in Cancer. This time, I'm going to take a little bit different approach. It's kind of funny, actually, the timing of this. And now as I was writing out my releasing, the things I want to let go of and move beyond, I was pinging off some recent events and things that have happened that are just like perfectly in alignment and in resonance with the fact that this is the full moon in Cancer that we're experiencing. And so it's kind of fun. I love when you can pick out those synchronicities where things just kind of line up perfectly with the astrology of what's going on in the moment. And so for me, with this being a second house full moon relating to earned income and expenses and possessions, here's the direction that I took. I stated, I release my fears, known or unknown, because sometimes, right, our fears can be unconscious, identified or unconscious, of exposure and risk taking around how I earn income, I release my resistance to new and novel ways of generating income, which may seem scary or trigger fear of exposure or fear of vulnerability. I release attachment to traditional notions of earning and money making. And I release any and all attachments to possessions, belongings, material goods, which no longer serve me or whose usefulness I have outgrown. I release these things to serve others who may need them more. And I release these things with love and gratitude for the lessons that they brought me and the service which they rendered while they were in my life. And so that's exactly what I'm going to encourage you to do, is to state aloud what it is you're wanting to release that you've written down on your piece of paper. State aloud what you're releasing, and that you're releasing it with love and gratitude, because even anything that we're wanting to allow to move out of our life, while it was here for a reason. And generally that reason is a lesson that you needed to learn. And once you've learned that lesson, you've moved beyond the point where you need to maintain the attachment to whatever that was, if it's a physical thing or like an unconscious belief or a pattern of behavior that just doesn't serve you anymore. So now you're releasing it. And the interesting thing about releasing is that as we move through the releasing part, we free up room and space in our lives and in our experience so that the new can come in and fill the void. And that typically will begin to happen about 6 months down when we have the next new moon in the sign that we're working with. And so as you read it aloud, you state that you're releasing it with gratitude, with love, appreciation for the lessons that you brought. And then what you do is I don't want to blow out the mic with this loud clicking. And this might not even be a good lighter to be using right now, because sometimes it doesn't light as easily as you would want it to. But then you're going to burn your paper or tear it up into tiny little pieces. If you burn it, I encourage you to make sure that it burns completely, thoroughly. Or like I said, you can just tear it up. That energetically will accomplish the same thing. The idea is you're releasing it out into the universe symbolically so that it can go. And this time around, sometimes these are ready to go and they go up quick and burn thoroughly and they don't need my help. This one's needing a little encouragement. So maybe I still have some kind of attachments going on there, right? But you're just going to burn them or tear it up. Like I said, if you choose to burn it, please be safe. Do it in a fire safe manner. So, if you have a fire extinguisher, keep that nearby. Do it in a fire pit or a fireplace or a barbecue, someplace safe. And you can see, of course, when it's done, it's just going to be gone. And that's the energetic part of it's symbolic, but it reinforces your intention to let go of it. And the universe responds to that. Also keep in mind, full moon, especially in Cancer, this is a fantastic time to be charging crystals if you have them. So I would encourage you to get ready to do that as we move into the full moon proper on the 28th. If you would like to share what you're letting go of in the comments, I would be really excited to see what it is you are ready to move beyond. And I do have a few announcements for you, and I'm chuckling to myself because some of these are very, very relevant to the fact that this is a full moon in my money-making house, because some of these are around how I make money, right? So I want to invite you, if you got benefit out of this broadcast, to share it with a friend, tag a friend. Please like the video if you would. If you're not a subscriber, I want to invite you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. I do want to let you know, because we've been talking about this for months though, the 2021 Ultimate Astrological Planner is available for sale on the Mystick Physick Astrology website. Go to mystickphysick.com/2021 and you can shop the entire collection. There's some interesting things for this year. Penny's here to tell me that she's tired of waiting and ready to get out of this room. The Lahiri version of the planner is available, and the version of the planner with the Lahiri zodiac, oh, she's going to pop up and say hi here, also includes all of the traditional Indian holidays. So that's available for you. Definitely get your order in if you haven't already. It's not too late. The Ultimate Astrological Planner is color-coded with the best days of the year for love, for luck, and for business, and it's color-coded with all of the Mercury retrogrades, including the Mercury retrograde shadow periods, so that Mercury retrograde will not sneak up on you ever again. So be sure to get your copy of that. It's a very, very helpful planner. Comes in a bunch of different varieties. You can get it as like a little slimline executive planner, or you can get a full-on appointment planner, like a full-on day planner, depending on what type of planner you prefer. And here's the really exciting part. I've been saying for months now to stay tuned, because I was switching things up for the new year. I was changing things around in the way that I bring astrology to you and in the way that I offer what I offer to you. And the pieces have finally been coming together. If you're not a member of the Sidereal Insights Astrology community on Facebook, I would encourage you to join. I did update the schedule of broadcasts, the events calendar in that group and on the Mystick Physick Astrology Facebook page. So if you mark going on those events, you'll get reminders and notifications in advance of when I'm going to go live. Or alternatively, you could also sign up for the mailing list, and I will send out a reminder email ahead of when I'm going to be live. And follow up after the broadcast. In case you can't join me live, I'll send you a link to the replay of the video so that you can go through these practices. Or if we're talking about the Sidereal Insights Astro Update, you can get up to date on current planetary transits from a Fagan Bradley Western Sidereal perspective, with guidance on how you can navigate those transits, how they might play out, how you can leverage them and use them in your own life. So, but the cool thing is that I want to share with you, I have set up a Patreon feed, and I would invite you to join me there. The next couple of broadcasts will be live through Patreon. They will be available free to the general public. There are 3 different subscription tiers, membership tiers that you can sign up for, from very, very inexpensive, super affordable, to if you'd like to provide a little bit more support to the broadcast, that's wonderful too. So you can choose from any of the 3 different subscription tiers there. But part of the reason why I did that, those of you who've been following me for some time know that I used to have membership benefits and goodies available on my website at mystickphysick.com. And I had to take those away, partly because of changing features around the different tools that I was using to be able to offer those benefits and the membership capability. And it just wasn't functioning the way that I wanted it to anymore. And so I just kind of got rid of it because it wasn't working the way that I had envisioned. And I went ahead and set up this Patreon feed because, or this Patreon subscription model, because it allows me to bring back those membership benefits to you and offer them again, but in a new and improved sort of way. And so I would encourage you, go to patreon.com/mystickphysick, check out the 3 tiers so that you can see what all different goodies are available and the different membership benefits that you'll have access to. Go ahead and pick the one that fits you best, that's going to work best for you, and sign up for that. Just know that as I transition from doing the live broadcasting on this simulcast Facebook/YouTube format that I've been doing, it's a little bit cumbersome. It is not free of technical issues, as you've seen as we've gone through this past year when I rolled it out. It's going to streamline all of that and make it a lot easier. Part of what's exciting about that is that you will get the broadcasts in advance. You'll get early access to. I will still make the content free later for the general public. But if you're one of the 3 subscription tiers, you're going to get advanced access to the broadcast. It will be the only way that you can join me live once I complete the transition from doing things this way to doing it through the Patreon feed. And so keep that in mind. Plus, you're going to get extra goodies depending on which tier you sign up for. The goodies get even better and better as you go. So please check that out at patreon.com/Mystick Physick. The broadcast will be live through Patreon beginning January 31st. And the first handful or so of them will be open to the public so that you can kind of see how to work. You get a feel for the Patreon experience and have the opportunity to decide which membership tier you'd like to join me at. But definitely check out those membership levels and show your support. We'd be glad to have you. But I'm beginning the transition now. And partly it's to learn the new platform. Partly it's so that I can start rolling out this bonus content for folks who want to jump in and subscribe ahead of time. Please feel free. So head on over and check that out. And then also, I'm really, really, really tickled to announce that the Ultimate Astrological Planner for 2021 is available. And I do want to offer a special shout out and thank you to Michiel Bunder of Parasha's Light Vedic Astrology software, because it is his efforts that make a lot of the Ultimate Astrological Planner possible in the way that you get to experience them now. And so I just want to thank him very, very much for all of his hard work on the project. And thanks everyone for joining me. It's been delightful to have you. And I know some of you are going to be catching the replay just because there were some scheduling difficulties in your own life that prevented you from joining live. I want to thank you for joining me in this wonderful astrological adventure. And we will see you all again next time.